Hey, Allison Verhalen here with AV Writing Services, and today I want to talk about voice search. It is an incredibly important part of SEO, and I actually, when I was researching this, I couldn't believe that I hadn't already covered it on my blog because it's been growing in importance for, I don't want to say like years and years. I mean, it has been growing in importance for more than, I'd say, at least 1 or 2 years, which isn't really that long, but in SEO it is a really long time because things are constantly changing with SEO, and voice search is one of those things, right? Where it popped up and the computers are kind of figuring out how to understand what people are talking about when they say certain things, right? And they're getting better and better at putting things in context when people ask for certain things verbally. And they're getting better and better at understanding human speech, right? Because when we ask for something verbally, it's going to be very different from how we type it into a search bar. So we are going to go over some of the tips and tricks that you can use to optimize your content for voice search. So last I checked, there was a study that said as much as 44% of internet users had used voice search at least sometime in the past month, right? So that's almost half. And like I said, this is a growing trend. I would not be at all surprised if it is well over half of internet users by the end of 2021. So something to keep in mind. So here we go with our tips as to how you can really make the most of it and get in front of those people who are using voice search to look for you, to look for information. And I was just talking about keywords and key phrases, right? The fact that they ask for things differently when they do it verbally versus when they type it into a search bar. So that is your first tip right there, is you're gonna know whether or not your audience is using voice search. We're gonna get into that a little bit later. But B, you have to know what keywords and phrases they're using when they're using voice search compared to when they're typing it into a search bar. So for example, if they want to know about the best way to get a business loan, if they're typing it into a search bar, it's probably going to be something like business loan tips, right? Or how to get a business loan. Whereas when they ask their phone or Siri or Alexa, whichever they're using, they're going to be like, hey Siri, how can I get a business loan? It's not very different, right? The business loan keyword is still in there, but as far as the longer tail keyword, suddenly you don't have the word tips in there. You have how to or how can I. So you're gonna need to make sure that that goes into your content over the tips if your target audience is using a lot of voice search. Now, if you have long content, you can do both, right? You can have the tips in there, you can have the how can I in there, you can optimize for both so that you're showing up in those searches for people who are still using the search bar, or for the instances where they're using their search bar, right? People aren't always using voice search. Even the people who are using it once a month or more than once a month are probably at some point or another are still using the standard search bar. So keep that in mind. We're going to try and give you tips in this video to optimize for both the more traditional form of searching as well as voice search. So next up, number 2 is Google versus Bing. And it's really more than Bing, but I use Bing as another example because I think it's Google's biggest competitor. And that doesn't sound like much because Google has dominated the market. Bing's overall market share is a fraction of Google's market share when you talk about online search and online advertising. But I've already mentioned in another video and blog post the fact that Google is currently facing a lawsuit for possibly having a monopoly on the world of online searches and online advertising. So Google might be forced to stop some of its allegedly discriminatory practices, and that could be huge if people, other companies like Bing and DuckDuckGo are given an opportunity to get more of a share in the market of online advertising and online search. So keep that in mind. And then when it comes to voice search, obviously we use our phones. If you're using an iPhone, you're probably using Google. That's great. But if you're using a smart speaker to verbally ask for things, it might not be using Google. If you have Google Home, obviously that's going to use Google. But Alexa, which is produced by Amazon, that doesn't use Google. That uses a combination of Bing and your Amazon search history, depending on what you're looking for. So Google might not be the giant in the room anymore. So tip number 2 is to start looking at other search engines. Bing is a big one. Consider what their algorithm takes into account. What is their algorithm doing? How does it decide which content goes with which searches? So that's number 2. So number 3 is your ideal blog post length. So this is another thing I talk about a lot as far as you need really long blog posts, especially if you're in a B2B industry, because people really want that in-depth information. Unless they're using voice search to look for something. In that case, they want a short, concise, snappy answer. So should I start writing shorter blog posts? Because I write super long blog posts. I try to practice what I preach. So what should I be doing? So I think you can have it both ways here. I think you can give a short, concise answer at the very top of your blog post and then go more in depth. So if people are using voice search and they just want a short, quick answer, that's it. It's right there. If they want more in depth, they can continue reading the blog posts or having their smart speaker read it out to them, or however that works. I don't actually know how smart speakers work because I don't actually use one. I see them on TV, but that's about it. So if you have had your smart speaker rattle off all kinds of data and stats to you, let me know, because I would be interested in hearing about that. So that is what are we at? Number 3. Number 4, you've got your ideal blog post length. So next up is your FAQ page, your frequently asked questions. Every website should have an FAQ page, because regardless of your industry, you have all kinds of questions that you hear over and over and over. You hear them all the time and you're sick of answering them, right? So you have a handy dandy FAQ page where people can go when they ask those questions. You can just go, oh, you want an answer to this question? It's right over here. And it's great for SEO. It's great for people who are coming to your website, who are trying to find out more about your industry, about what you specifically provide for your clients. And that is absolutely something that also needs to be taken into account with voice search, because like I said, people ask for things differently when they're using voice search compared to when they are typing it into a search bar. So again, that tips part is going to go away, but the who, where, how, when, why, those are all the kinds of things that voice search queries tend to start with. So make sure that in your FAQ page, all of those questions that you're answering start with how, who, what, where, when, why, right? Because you want to optimize that to make sure that when people are asking questions in that way, and those are the keywords and key phrases they're using, that you're going to be more likely to show up in those searches. Next up is more mobile, more local. So I did talk about smart speakers, and they are a growing trend, and there is no denying that. But for right now, most people are still doing voice search on their phone, which means they're going to use voice search when they're out and about, maybe when they're in the car, so they're hands-free. They're just going to say, hey, Siri, I need such and such, and Siri pops up with an answer for them. That means that usually they're looking for something, a brick and mortar restaurant or a store, and I know things are weird with that right now with the shutdown, but a lot of stores have opened up. They require you to wear masks. They might limit their capacity, but you can still go into a store and get what you need. So people are going to be looking for stuff on their phone, which means Google needs to know where you are located. So make that clear on your website, on your Google My Business page, that you clearly say where you are located, or if there's a radius that you tend to operate in, that you tend to serve clients in, make it known what that radius is. So when people are looking for such and such in my area or such and such near me, Google knows where we are. Google knows where we are when we are searching for certain things. So it's going to say, okay, you're looking for such and such, you're in this area, you probably want, Mexican restaurants in this particular area, and that's what it's going to show up for you. So make sure, if you are trying to get those customers who are driving around your block and they don't know that you're there, make sure that if they don't see you, that at least Google will see you, right? See you, so that you can show up in those searches. So more mobile and again, make sure you're mobile friendly. I mean, obviously your website should have been mobile friendly for years now, but if for some reason it isn't, That is also a big part of voice search. Make sure, because they could be asking Google something verbally and then they want to see it pop up on their phone screen. And if yours doesn't pop up, or if the images don't fit, or it kind of runs off to the side, they're just going to click away and find something else. So absolutely make sure that your website is mobile friendly and that it is local friendly. You know what I mean. Next up is know your target audience, right? So like I said, 44% of overall internet users are using voice search, but not everyone is using voice search. Obviously, millennials, the younger you get, the millennials, the Gen Zers, we are much more likely to use voice search compared to our parents and grandparents. But that was still only like 35% of millennials and Gen Zers using voice search, right? So it's still not all of them. And then when you look at baby boomers and older, about 10% of them are using voice search. So while you can kind of get an idea of whether or not people are using voice search based on their age, it's not perfect, right? Because there are exceptions to every rule. So maybe you are targeting baby boomers, but maybe they're really tech savvy baby boomers because of whatever it is that you provide. So keep that in mind. Maybe they are using voice search. Maybe they love being hands-free. Maybe they have arthritis and typing something in isn't beneficial to them. So using voice search is super helpful. So keep all those things in mind. And again, if maybe they are baby or Gen Zers or millennials, but they're a little more traditional and they don't really want to go for voice search for whatever reason, keep all of those things in mind. So know your target audience and do some A/B testing. See what works, what doesn't work. I always recommend this with every aspect of your marketing, as with the knowing your audience, is test it, see what works. Don't just take my word for it. I can tell you the generalizations of what the data is telling us, of what works most of the time, but it's all going to come down to your particular audience, what they want to see or hear, as the case may be, and how you can best attract, engage, and convert them. So that is it. Those are my 7 tips for how you can optimize your content for voice search in today's day and age, which is, end of January 2021. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to me directly. My website is avwritingservices.com. I have even more tips and tricks and data and stats on that website. You can check it all out there. And I do have an FAQ page, yes. And if you have any questions, you can reach me directly at info@avwritingservices.com. Thanks so much. Have a great week and happy marketing.